Alright guys, I wanted to talk about the Iron Kingdom's core rules that came out. If you let me grab my copy, this is how well prepared I am. Alright, so, and I could just make another video where I didn't do that, but I'm not gonna because reality is more fun. So, get rid of some glare for you. We'll call it that way. Iron Kingdom's core rules. You know, Full Metal Fantasy role-playing game. I'm sure some of you guys have picked it up by now. If you haven't, I suggest you do. It's a great game system. I myself never played the first one, although I did pick up on a decent amount of fluff from it, simply for, you know, sort of Rulic study and whatnot. And this has a ton of that, but more on that in a minute. So, I never played the first one, like I said. I've played D&D 3.5, 4, and now 5th edition. I've played Pathfinder, like I said, I've played D&D 3.5. Let's see, I've played Rifts, if anybody's ever played Rifts, slightly older gaming set, rule set, or RPG system. That's the word. That's the right words. You know, I've played a fair share of role-playing games, and this one is really well done. Just getting into the book, first off, the book is, let's see, $60, I think. Can't quite recall. $60, yeah. $60, hardcover, great book. You know, it's a decent-sized book, looking at about 350 to 400 pages, I think. It's got everything you need to start playing. It is a little odd when you realize what it's comprised of, though, or composed of. What's in it? The first 100 and, let me check here, I believe it's 108 pages. First 104 pages are completely fluff. And when I say fluff, I don't just mean stories like you find in the War Machine books or the Hordes books. This is everything you could ever really want to know from a historical point of view, sort of cultural points, societal points, the history of all of Immoren since the beginning of Immoren. It's great. And they didn't focus obviously, you know, because the game is all-inclusive, they didn't focus mainly on any of the core factions. So it's not like Signar-centric or Khador-centric or Crix or any of those guys. It covers literally everything. So, I mean, just flipping through it right here, it starts off with prehistory and cosmology, having to do with sort of the creation stories of the different groups. I mean, you've got Menoth, you've got the Devourer Worm, you've got Dunia, you've got Ursian and the reincarnation and afterlife, you've got Orboros, the World Serpent, I mean, everything. Dunian reincarnation, the beginning of the War of Souls, the Divine Court and the Veld. You've got Karg Drugan and the Great Fathers, which is the Rulic creation story, you know, the giant mountain inside of Earth that, you know, sort of created dwarves because it was bored, and then had the dwarves start mining it because he wanted them to do something, and then they rebelled, and, you know, plowed into it, mined through it, mined up into the world, and that's where they came from. Literally born of an underground, inside existence mountain. That's kind of fun. And the original, you know, created the original 13, and those were the houses. You probably know most of this. But anyways, it's all in there, and to great extent. It's not just little blips. I mean, focusing on Rulic alone, because, hey, why not? It's my video. You're talking, let's see here, almost 2 full pages of just the creation story. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4... 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, little description section, 17, 18, 19, 20 full paragraphs on the creation story just for Rule. I mean, good stuff. All the way down into the like, it lists off, I believe, if I can find it in here, I mean, just tons of great knowledge. It lists off the original 13 fathers' names, the names of the 13 slaves as they're referred to, Durg, Dol, Dolvor, Gard, Godor, Hor, Jord, Lodhall, Odom, Orm, Sigmar, Udo, and Uldar, in case you were curious. And it goes on to discuss the clay wives and the core elements of the different houses, and it covers religion for everyone in a great detail. So that's very cool. It also goes on, after history, goes on to history, starting all the way from the beginning of history. The one thing that annoys me, and I'm going to take this as a win for us, but other people probably won't, and I'll show you what I'm talking about here. There's this lovely few pages. I don't know how well that's in focus. Let's see if I can do something about that. Alright, so there's these few pages here, which are essentially a timeline from the beginning of time to present. And it starts over here, very beginning of time. And it starts, I don't know if you can see that, but it starts at 10,000 BR, which is, before the rebellion of the Orgoth, or when we overthrew the Orgoth. So it starts right there, and you can see that it starts with elves. And then just after that, and I'm trying to get my camera to focus for you guys, just after that it goes on to talk about the dwarves settling rule. So let's just think about this logically here for a minute. How did the dwarves settle rule if they didn't already exist? They just, day one popped out of the earth and boom, rule, claim a nation. Let's throw some buildings up. It's not what happened. Obviously, dwarves, and that happened at 8500 BR. So supposedly 1500 years after the elven tribes unite as the Empire of Laos and the Eastern Imran. I'm going to go ahead and say the dwarves existed first, because the elves are still described as a tribe when they go on to discuss, when they get to their point in the fluff. Dwarves basically found a nation. So dwarves are obviously more advanced at the time, therefore had been around for longer. So I'm just going to say they were here first. So suck that, elves. But yeah, you got that whole page giving you a run through, and it goes on to the beginning of the Dragon Father and the Mulgore, which are the sort of the original form of the what do I want to say? Ogren, goblins, trollkin, the followers of Dunia. And it covers everything through history. You literally, it's like an Imran history lesson. So that's great. Like I said, 104 pages of that goes right through the Orgoth occupation and through the rebellion. It does speak about how the Colossals were built in assistance with rule. Again, I've argued that point several times. You guys have probably heard me do that and joined in, stuff like that. Yeah, so keeping on all the way up to right now in history, as far as War Machine and Hordes have gone. So, and then it goes on from history, leaves history at around page 50, and it gets on to more of a description of modern culture. So society and how day-to-day life works in the different areas of life inside of Imran. So you've got the description of the separate empires, you've got Signar, you've got Khador, you've got Lael divided, you've got Ord, Protectorate of Menoth, however you want to say it. It is Khador, though. It's not Khador or Kardor. They defined it in Prime MK2, so it's Khador. Don't screw that one up. Crix, Eos, and then Rule, which I'm not sure if this one has ever appeared before. This kind of popped out to me immediately because I hadn't seen it before. The symbol that they chose to go with for Rule, yeah, you guys can see it there. That symbol looks almost like a rook from chess with two gear halves on either side of it, or one gear half on either side of it. I don't think I'd ever seen that one before, so that's interesting. But I could have just not been paying attention. Maybe you guys can fill me in. So, and again, no skimping on Rule at all. You've got almost 3 whole pages on Rule, and then you've got a nice little sort of cutout block right there on Ogren culture in Rule. The Ogren of Rule. and it goes in and discusses them, and even a little blip on the Gobbers, which exist in Rule as well. So some very cool stuff there. It goes on to discuss the different races. As the people of Western Immorin, you've got Casbians and Sulis, Idrians, Cards, Kazites, Midlanders, Mordanes, Rin, the Shard, Skarov, Thurians, Thodarans, Umbrians, and other human existences. Then you have non-human races, Gobbers or Goblins, Bogrin, or also a different sort of subrace of Goblin, Trollkin, Rulefolk or Dwarves, Ogren, Eosians or Elves, Niz, also Elves, and then there are a few other races thrown in sort of as just a quick toss-off too. You've got Bog Trogs, Pharaoh, Croaks, different things like that. Citrixus, which technically aren't human, Cyclops, Satyrs, Trolls, different things like that. The languages of the Iron Kingdoms, I mean, they cover everything here. So you've got Caspian languages, Caspian, which is extinct, Signarin, and Sulis. Sulis is actually sort of a ghetto speak of Signarin. Laelis, Ordic, Skard. Then you've got the Kurzic languages. These are sort of the different, how you have like Germanic languages and Latin languages, or the Romantic languages, sort of their different bases, their foundations. You've got Kurzic, which is extinct, Khadoran, obviously spoken, Kazite, Umbrian, and then you've got Mulgar languages, which are spoken by the followers of Dunia. You've got Mulgar and Gobberish, which are the two common ones, but then you've also got Mulgar Og and Mulgar Troll, which are used more as sort of like a religious language to recite prayers of Dunia and sort of dinner talk. It's not something they use in public. It's more, same thing as Mulgar for Gobbers and Ogrin and Trollkin. Then you've got the Moradin languages, Moradin, which is extinct, Idrian, Thurian, Rulik, which is in there. So interesting to point out, just noticed myself, because obviously I haven't read through all of this yet, Moradin languages. So you've got Idrian, Thurian, Rulik, Cher, and Eric. So apparently Rulik and Idrian stem from the same core language set, so that's cool. And then there's even a quick list of obscure languages that basically nobody speaks anymore. Stuff like that. Goes on to sort of industry in the kingdoms, steam power and its advantages and how it's used. The industrious sections, transport by land and sea. It discusses rail travel, steamships and steamboats, the rise of cities, the way that law is sort of invoked and covered in the different areas, different leagues of law and sort of different governments, education system, commerce and travel, the different, you've got the different, what would you call it, monies, used in the different areas. You've got, it discusses everybody's different coin. Unfortunately, there's this nice little conversion table. I'll show it to you guys real quick. That basically, that guy right there. Don't know how well you can read it, but it's a nice little conversion table. And unfortunately, rules money is not on it, though it is described in one of the sections to the side. But it's basically their money is worth the quality. Their money is worth the metal that it's stamped on. So there's no monetary value to just random scraps. So you stamp a crown on it, and it's worth this. It's a chunk of gold pressed into a coin is worth that coin's weight in gold. It's very straightforward. You've got different military services, mercenary. You've got the rise of magic and different sort of schools of magic. Everything. Then it gets into a brief discussion of how mechanical works, steam jacks, war jacks. Then it goes into religion, similar to the creation stories, but also, obviously a bit more in-depth in the way that they're followed in modern society. You've got the Church of Morrow, you've got, and all these are in great detail. Let's see, you've got the Thammarite cults, Scions of Thammar, all of these, just tons of information. The Menite Temple, Dunian faiths, cults of the Devourer Worm, cults of Cyrus, Fane of Skria, Fane of Nizor, Church of the Great Fathers, that's us. Yeah, and then you get on to character creation. So, Really great stuff. Pick the book up. It's amazing.